This is Talking Hardcore, the podcast for people who love hardcore history.
You study history because it allows us to understand the present and prepare for the future.
I'm not trolling.
And I love it.
I'm just pointing out where they're wrong.
The Talking Hardcore podcast is presented by Ace Industrial Solutions. Are you in need of skilled trade professionals for your next project? Look no further.
All right.
Are you going to do it?
Take us in there.
Are you going to do it?
Take us in.
You're listening to, or you're watching,
Or listening to.
Talking Hardcore with
Now
Scott.
do it with an accent.
You are listening to or watching Talking Hardcore with Scott.
And George.
And
joining us today.
Is longtime contributor and author Matt Bella.
Hi,
It
folks.
sounds way cooler with the accent.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about Hardcore History episode 20,
19.
19,
Is it 19?
which is Apache Tears. And this ties in really well with the upcoming book club event. When you listen to this, if you're listening to this when it first comes out, February 27th, we are hosting a live book club event to talk about one of the books that Dan talks about in this podcast called Indy by Eve Ball, where it's a firsthand primary source account of the end of the Apache Wars, basically. And I'm most way through the book, or not most way, I'm halfway through the book. It's pretty awesome. I'm enjoying it, and I hope you guys, if you listen to this, get the book. There'll be a link in the description. Join us. If you want to talk, you can. If you want to just be in the audience, you can. There's a link in the description to the Discord channel where we're going to host event live, and then we'll put it on the podcast stream.
And who knows who's going to join for the book club event?
Yeah,
For now,
I
it'll be
invited
fun.
a few people that we've had on the podcast recently that you may have heard of, but they haven't said yes.
That's fair. I said who knows.
Who knows?
We don't even know.
No, we never know. A lot of times it's just us and then this guy named Jack who's on the server.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Shout
Shout
out
out
to
to
Jack.
Jack.
Yeah.
Shout out to
champion.
Jack. Simple
He's
Jack.
great.
Yeah.
We love you, Jack.
It's simple. That's his username. That's from
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, one of the best war movies of all time.
Yeah, it is.
Like I feel like we
I
might
thought
need
it was
to
a
do.
documentary. It's a documentary.
Yeah, basically, right?
Yeah.
We might need to do an episode on Tropic Thunder sometime.
I think we'll get canceled.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I
we
was
want to
gonna
get
say.
canceled.
Don't say that.
Cancel increases your ratings.
I don't know
It
if you want to
does.
say that.
I do.
no such
What are
thing
they
as
going to
bad
do?
publicity.
Fire us?
Cancel us?
Yeah, they go for it.
So
We don't make any money from this,
that's true.
so canceling is not going to hurt us.
Well, okay. So Apache Tears. One thing I thought was really interesting.
I like it when you steer the ship. This is
Yeah.
fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now you can screw with me.
Yes.
So I thought it was interesting. In Apache Tears, he actually says both Inda and Inda.
They were two different things.
Yep. One means the living and one means the dead.
So he's referencing
Wow.
Eve Ball's book, because Dan talks about that first at the beginning, which is ND, which is what the Apache called themselves, and it means the dead. And they called
The
the
white
white man, or white eyes,
Inda,
which I wonder why they say white eyes.
because they have white eyes.
Yeah, but they called Europeans white eyes and Mexicans white eyes. What
Yeah.
color were the Apache eyes?
I thought
I
that
think-
too.
Am I
don't
thinking of
understand.
this wrong? But that's
No,
they
I
say
thought
it
that
in
too. Yeah.
Eve Ball's book. Dan says it. Doc Lugie specifically says the term white eyes.
I thought, and I, don't- you know what? I don't want to speak out.
Yeah,
I don't wanna speak out of
That's
turn here.
that-
So,
that's
he
probably
does.
smart.
He talks about the white eyes. Yeah, no, yeah. I thought
Yeah,
that
I
was
just
odd as
wonder,
well.
like,
Mhm.
did they? I don't know. It seems like I could see round eye or something like that, but white eyes seem strange.
well, unless your eyes have a reddish tint to them.
And maybe when you're out in the sun in the desert all the time. Okay, but let's jump into the podcast. This is getting strange already. It might get
It
weird.
gets weird.
Yep.
It might get
Okay.
weird.
Matt, if you don't mind, I've got a subject that I thought of when I was listening to the episode that I wanted to bring up with you guys.
Sure.
So Dan talks about the Apaches' lineage, and he said it's believed based on their language that they're from Siberia, which most native tribes, or all native tribes, tend to be related to Siberia. But they were living in Canada until roughly like 14 to 1500 AD,
Okay.
when they moved down into Mexico, or into into what's now America, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, even as far as maybe Kansas. But I thought about that, and that's fascinating to think about. 1400.
Well,
So that means they were there for
400 years.
100
years?
years before Cortez.
Sure.
I mean, 115 years before Cortez. I mean, that was in 1510. I think he was
BC.
No.
AD.
No, he said AD in the podcast. He said they moved from Canada down south in 1400 AD.
Yeah, but where'd the natives and like where'd the Aztecs and the Mayans come from then?
Well, no, this is specifically the Apache.
No, I gotcha.
There was already people there. There was already Native American other tribes there.
Gotcha.
The Apache moved down and basically just tried to kick them out or war with them. As often happens, like look at the steppe, right? They just spread out, and it kind of ping pongs into the next.
So the Apache were there for about 300 or 400 years.
By the time they were fighting Hispanish, they were there 150 years, 200 years tops. Right? It's interesting that they were not in North America. I mean, in what is United States for more than maybe 100 or 200 years more than the Europeans.
Well, and talk about a swing in climate and
right.
I mean, if in 150 years you develop like your survival blanket and wicker baskets or baskets that they wove, and you came from like northern cold temperatures, and then all of a sudden you adapted over 150 years,
right,
to your environment to
the well, you think about it, right? Is it either way? You have to be hard as shit. Those are the two climates where you got to be hard. Yeah. You got that Canadian cold as hell, and then you got that desert. Yep, mountain and desert.
I guess it's all dry and shitty when you get down to it.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's cold or hot at that point.
Yeah, maybe they were in the Rockies area of Canada, and so they just kind of moved down the mountain ranges.
That's possible.
It's something that struck me is because we always talk about Native Americans. Well, I mean, obviously, I think that's a ridiculous term because no humans are native to North America. Okay. You could say First Peoples.
Sure.
Okay, but we don't even know if they're First Peoples. Like, that's just making assumptions because we don't have enough data. For all we know, those people killed somebody out, wiped out a group, that wiped out another group, that wiped out another group, that wiped out that First Peoples group.
I believe the term would be First Nations.
Yeah, but that's the point. We don't even know that.
Right? For lack of a better term, let's go by what they call themselves.
Because what else do you just say? You just say, tribal peoples.
Well, now I have to ask.
That's what you could really say. You could say tribal peoples because that's accurate.
This is something I have to ask. Have either of you seen Bone Tomahawk?
I think I've seen that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, though.
It's with Kurt Douglas
Russell.
and Kurt Russell. Yeah. They talk about troglodytes, like in the area, like
so
in
maybe
New Mexico.
Neanderthals or something like that.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And then
that's interesting.
It is found. I almost threw it up in the server today. There's a news article where there's like a new discovery they found from a mammoth hunting site in North America. They found a 13,000-year-old bead, which is kind of resets the clock a little bit or establishes something of the Clovis people. But it's a 13.
You said bee?
A bead, a bone bead. Yeah.
Okay,
so,
I thought you said bee.
They dated it with they dated it with something in the protein. I'll look for the article again and throw it up. It was very interesting. So that's pretty far back, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, so the one was interesting with that was the New Mexico footsteps that they found.
Yeah. Oh wow.
In the they found footprints. I can't remember why they were so well preserved, but they were extremely well preserved, and they dated them back like 20,000 years.
That's
so
insane.
they've pushed the clock back that far.
Wow, that's
crazy. Really, if you think about how there's so much stuff buried on the coast, because most of the travel was probably done along the coast, who knows how long ago that was, right? I mean, we have no clue. Every time scientists or archaeologists think, well, this is when it happened, they find something that pushes it further back.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that stuff's in the middle of the continent. So it's unlikely that's the earliest shit. And then one of the earliest sites is down at the bottom of Peru, and it's 16,000 years old. So they were down at the bottom of Peru 16,000 years ago.
Just think what we were getting up to way back in the day. It's so crazy to think about. It's really amazing.
That's why it would be sweet if they could figure out a way to really find what's going on off the coast and find that stuff, because I would love for them to actually establish more of a legit timeline on that. Because maybe somebody like Grant Hancock is right, and people have been over here for 50,000 years.
That's possible. I mean,
who knows? But maybe he's crazy.
That'd be a hell of an oral history.
It would be.
We're going to talk about 50,000 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
To modern day Apache.
What do you think about that too, right? You look at these cultures that were that ancient, all over the world had so much in common, that it really does seem like there was a pretty established culture before everybody kind of branched out, and then it slowly evolved into its separate.
Yeah.
Which is just fascinating to think about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, Matt, what struck you most about Apache Tears?
Well, I listened to this episode, again, in preparation for our recording tonight, the same day as I heard the new Hardcore History Addendum episode about the Holocaust, and the comparisons are unavoidable.
You're right. Different, though.
Different,
right?
But so much similar. Everything from Hitler taking his cue from about expansionism from, not only Britain and India, but America in America, like wiping out the the first people here. But also,
you mentioned that, yeah.
Also the raiders and the marauders coming in the night and people having to hide their family members from the American troops and that kind of thing. And it just really brought it home to me.
He tells this story in the podcast about a group of Mexican raiders attacking this Apache tribe in the middle of the night, and the mom dies, the baby dies, the little sister gets hidden in the arroyo, and the brother makes it a way to save her, and it's fucking terrible.
It is terrible, and you can see why these people had bitter blood feuds going back, generations. And it was it was just so similar to the things they were talking about hiding from the Nazis, and it just really puts you in perspective, man, when you're a member of this modern society.
And I was doing the same thing as you. I was listening to the addendum one as well.
Yeah.
And for me, what sticks out more is the difference, though.
Okay, good.
What's highlighted is the difference. The Apache were brutal as well.
They were brutal as well, yeah.
The Jews weren't
No, they weren't
raiding
going around
the Germans.
Raiding. Right, but why were they raiding? I mean, they were a warlike people because they were hunters, right?
Right. They were raiding because that's how they survived.
Right, but when the white man came, I mean, they were literally just protecting their territory.
I don't think that's accurate, Matt. They were raiding their neighbors before that. They were just they were natives.
Right.
So nobody, we don't have, a lot of record of it, but that was their culture. That's how they made a living. Yeah. Similar to the Vikings that we talked about in the Viking episode. You make a living, you have to do this to be part. They were a warrior people, right?
That's a good point.
They were a warrior people that made their money, or not their money. They made their whole life about that. You wouldn't get married if you didn't kill an enemy in battle.
No.
Right? I mean, how the hell do you, as a civilized
and a
sedentary society, how do you live next to that?
Right. That's a good point. And an Apache couldn't become brave or unless he went until after he went on 4 raids, right?
That's what it was.
And Dan describes those raids as Charles Manson murder scenes, right? So that was not
a lot
pretty
of times
stuff.
they were.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
You had
with
to go
that?
out. You had to get your blood. Well, you obviously don't treat with them because I'm not saying you don't
can't
try.
Because the next generation still needs to become braves. They want to get laid. They want to have wives.
And he talks about that in the episode as well. They had people coming in who still live that life, coming into the more settled Apache region, saying,
"What do you do?
This is what I did. Look at what I got." And then the young people would go off and join them. So it was generational. And I'm not sure if there was ever any attempts at peace or whatever, but when you are just trying to settle down and have white farmers on this land, and then, you were dealing with probably I'm not incredibly educated on this, but Dan puts them forth as probably one of the greatest, if not the most fierce adversary of the settlers in that region.
Right.
Yeah, that's you exterminate them, unfortunately, and eventually they were pacified to the point where they were crushed and put on a reservation. He talks about in 1787, I believe it was, 600 Apache warriors attacked the city of Tucson, Arizona. Right?
Yeah.
Like, just imagine that. What that looked like.
Yeah, I think it was earlier than that, though.
It was
17. I'm sorry, you're right. 1787 when it was still Spanish. Yeah.
It's insane, man.
Yeah. And then by the time, it was Americans fighting them, it was down to, 50 or 60, their numbers. But I don't blame the Apache, but I don't blame the settlers either.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, you were going to have a boundary. Okay, and no matter what, the Apache were going to cross it. That's their nature. That's what their culture required.
Yeah, but Dan even brings up, like, the Americans didn't even know that was Apache land. They thought it was Mexican land.
Right. Well, and the Mexicans were like, yeah, you can have it, because they were sick of getting murdered by the Apache. Right? So the whole thing's a mess. But even if they knew, and they created a perimeter and said, okay, we'll treaty with you. That's your land. We'll stay over here. And even if they could enforce that, which, good luck, the Apache needed to raid.
Yeah.
That was their culture. That was the way they supported themselves. There wasn't enough resources there for them to not do that, right? So no matter what, their culture had to die. And that sucks.
That's tough. It's tough.
It
but it's
sucks.
True. Yeah.
But that's just a fact of life that I don't think anybody should feel guilty about.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody should feel guilty about that.
One culture clashing with another. I mean, you can talk about who had the right to be there or whatever, but I mean, hey, it was.
But that's every culture from the dawn of time.
It is.
Well, and what Matt just said, though, who had the right to be there, right? But the Apache were only there for 100 years before the settlers, right? So they came in and did what the settlers did to them, to the tribes that were there before.
Yep.
Right? Because that's human nature. And it sucks. But that's literally how we dealt with each other forever.
Maybe that's why Dan put the Apache forward in this episode. One, he obviously has an affinity for them, probably as a boy reading stories.
Oh, he loves the tribes.
Right? And then a great admiration for their skills as a particular tribal people,
right.
Specifically. But just because it was such an impossible situation where this was the real colonization and indigenous people coming to a head. Like, this was the warriors meeting the warriors. You know what I mean? Like, it was never going to be peace between these people, and here's how it turned out.
It couldn't be. And if America was more like the Nazis, then we wouldn't have Eve Ball's stories. Those guys wouldn't have still been alive to tell her. Right? I mean, think about it. They put them on reservations. They could have just killed them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, they would send them to school. Now, the school was partly to get them to assimilate to our culture.
Yeah, it was.
But they could have just took them to say we're going to take them to school and then whack them all.
Forcing them to, punishing them for speaking
What would
their own
Genghis
language
have done to the Apaches?
I mean,
he would have either got them to be on his side.
At the very least, they'd be paying taxes, right?
Well, no, they would have been on his side, right?
Or paying taxes.
Or dead, because they would have never agreed to pay tribute.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked out. So it was either they were going to bend to his will, or I will kill them all.
You're also talking about Genghis Khan.
Right.
I mean,
that's my point.
A different there.
That's my point. If we're talking about things like the Holocaust.
The two comparisons we have for America in this situation are the Nazis and Genghis Khan, right?
Well, no, but I think America comes off favorably compared to those two, and it's something to remember.
Yeah,
because we talk about what happened to the Native Americans like it was a Holocaust.
Sure.
But then you listen to what happened in the Holocaust, and it sure shit wasn't.
No.
It was bad. It was awful. And there were things like the Trail of Tears. Terrible. But in general, America did not go out of their way to kill as many Indians as they could.
There were pogroms from the Mexicans where you go out and collect scalps because they were so tired of the rating,
Sure.
which you have supported against George in this situation. So there were
You're
things
right.
like that, but there was no, industrialized mass slaughter program, and it was much
Right.
more battles and warfare, and you attack us, we attack you kind of thing.
It was much more like it was regular old school warfare
right.
than it was
And I'm
any
sure if
kind
you're on
of
the ground at the time, if that's your family members, you don't feel so kindly
Well, and I
about
don't
it,
blame Doc Loogie for being racist against
for
white
hating
people
the
until he died. Of course he should be.
Yeah.
Look what he went through. That's
100%.
also human nature.
Yep.
Right? That sucks too. Right? That's just, I mean, history sucked.
Yep. Well,
That's like Will Riley said, right? History sucked. And the fact that we're at a point now where we look at that shit and we're like, hey, let's try not to do that.
yeah.
That's awesome.
But and then we strive
Hopefully.
not to do that.
Right. We should be proud of ourselves. Chimps don't do that. Dolphins don't do that. They're rapey as shit.
the assholes of the
All right.
ocean.
But on a funnier point here, Matt, I know you haven't had a chance to listen to the new Daniele Bolelli episode that just came out an hour before we started talking.
Looking
But
forward
at
to
the
it.
end, we were talking about, remember when we were talking about the technology they have to read the ancient scrolls?
Yeah.
And Scott was thinking about the Library of Alexander.
Yep.
And how we could,
Alexandria.
and how it would be cool if they could figure out a way to find that and then read the scrolls. And I said,
they have it. The Library of Alexandria is still, I've been to Alexandria, and my guide was like, that's where it was, and it's the base of the structure, and they took it apart and made it like the Muslims made a new structure out of it, and then the rest went into the sea, basically.
Right.
Taken apart.
But maybe they could find those scrolls in the sea and read them with this new technology, or who knows?
That'd be cool. Yeah.
But you know what I told Scott? I figured it's probably 99% porn. I mean, if that's our... it popped in my head then, but now the more I've thought about it, the more I think, look at the internet, dude.
I disagree.
We have all of human knowledge at our fingertips. The best, the internet is the Library of Alexander, but better, right?
Mm.
And what is it? 99% porn.
I don't think it's 99.
Well, that's what it used to be. I bet it's not gotten less. I mean, think about OnlyFans and think about all that shit. Like, okay, if you're going just by video uploads, how much is porn?
I don't know.
Right? I bet there's a shit ton of Kama Sutras-like books in the Library of Alexandria. That's all I'm saying.
That's fine. They were probably much freer about sex. That's fine. I bet.
Well, it's not even freer. That's just what people talk about.
We're talking erotic plays, and we're talking body love stories.
I mean, obviously, it's not videos, right? But all kinds of erotic plays is a great way to describe it, or instruction manuals.
So, folks, Talking Hardcore is going to be coming out with some merch, I was told today, and that is the subject. That is going to be a quote on one of the shirts. The Library of Alexandria was 90% porn. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Perfect. That will be on there.
Well, it says 35% of all internet downloads are related to pornography.
Downloads? But what kind of creep downloads porn nowadays?
It says only 4% of websites are estimated to be porn.
Let's see how much streaming content it is, though.
Oh, I don't know.
This episode took a turn.
It did. But, the Apache stuff is awesome. I find that episode great. I love the Native American stuff. And, guys, this is the start of a series that we're going to be doing. So, as I talked about earlier, we are doing a book discussion on indie. Yeah. As I talked about earlier, we're going to be doing a live book club event on the Hardcore Discord that Matt started. It's February 27th, where we're going to talk about indie, which Dan specifically references quite a bunch in this Apache Tears episode. After that, we are going to do a history, a podcast about the Rest is History Aztec episode. So we're keeping this all Native American themed here for a while. The Aztec episode of the Rest is History, it's basically the Cortez up through the fall of the Aztecs, and it is awesome. And if you guys haven't read that or listened to that, check it out. But we're going to do a series on that as well. I think it's great. And then after that, we're going to do another discussion about American Long Hunters, which is another book about the Long Hunter Europeans who learned a lot from the Native Americans and ties into a lot of that early settler stuff. So I think you guys are going to like this theme. that we've got going on for a while, and we'll have a trivia coming up soon. We were going to do a trivia about Apache Tears, and then Matt and I were talking.
It's a little bleak for just to make
it's a
light
little
of it
bleak.
Like that. And plus,
although we did do Punic Nightmares and Ghosts of the Ops Front, but for some reason this one just seemed bleak.
Yeah. No, right, but we wouldn't have been able to discuss it as much if we did.
No, I think I think that was the right decision. But we're gonna do a fun trivia coming up soon.
I'm stoked about all of that stuff. That sounds.
It's gonna be fun, man.
Right on.
A lot of fun. And if you haven't checked it out, we did interview Daniele Bolelli's History on Fire, the guy who started the History on Fire podcast, and he mentioned in that podcast one of his favorite characters. I asked him his favorite warrior from history, and he said Sitting Bull. And he mentioned about the 4-part series he did about Sitting Bull. Right, and
too.
You guys got to check that out. I'm starting to listen to that now. It's really great.
There's too much content.
Yeah, well, you just got to stop working so much.
I can't help it.
That's the problem.
Just before I forget, can I just plug Dan's live shows really quick?
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
So I don't know if there's tickets left, but he plugged them as recently as this new episode, so he must think that there's still seats available. But I'm going on the 28th in Portland. It's going to be great.
So you can meet Matt there. Now you know what he looks like.
Damn.
No, I'm talking about Matt.
Oh,
if you go to the Portland show and you see Matt there, just yell, Talking Hardcore, and Matt will know that you know.
That's right.
You know him from there, and he might actually have a shirt on, because hopefully we'll have some merch rolled out by then.
There you go. I'll sport it.
And then Matt will have something, and you guys will recognize him.
Matt gets a free giveaway for that one.
Yeah, I won't charge,
thank you, gentlemen.
But it's just going to be a picture of my face.
But seriously, those live shows sound great. Those live shows sound great, and everybody get out there, buy a ticket.
Dude, I hope he comes near us. We'll see. I'm going to try to talk him into doing a trivia thing at his live show if he comes near us.
That'd be
maybe Chicago.
If he gets close enough to Chicago, we're there.
Sure.
I'm half inclined to fly out there. I'm hoping, that would be sweet, because those live shows, I cannot see how they would be anything less than awesome. Because we talked to Dan in person, and that's basically like what those live shows are going to be. And you guys, talking to him was like listening to a Hardcore History episode, but way better.
Yep.
And so
it's an interactive hardcore.
It's interactive. And so you're going to get to go to these live shows and listen to him talk, and maybe ask a question or two. Man, is it awesome? Like to get to hear. What you realize is, one, he's as nice and as kind and as generous as he is in person, as he comes across. He is that in person. And two, he's that knowledgeable in person. Like we're just talking, and he's just, his memory and all that stuff. So if somebody asks him a question, I feel like you're going to get a great answer. And if you're not, he's going to tell you, I don't know, I have to read a little bit more about this. He's not going to make up some shit.
Yeah.
Like Scott kind of got him to do homework.
We'll see about that one. I brought that up today, actually.
Oh, well, we'll see if maybe an addendum episode comes out about,
the feigned
flight
feigned retreat in modern
military.
Warfare.
Yeah, that would be freaking cool.
Totally.
But that brings me to one part of Apache Tears that I wanted to talk about.
Sure, please.
I thought it was really
because you've been a little too quiet, and I feel like Matt and I are carrying this shit. So could you please step it up?
You guys
we just can't stop talking. Is the only problem.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to turn off my mic and let Scott talk.
All right. So anyway, where I was thinking about how the Apaches were so good at hiding when clearly there's nothing to hide. Like, there's nothing.
That was great.
What a great part of the podcast.
And that's what I thought of, Scott, when you were talking about moving from Canada to the Southwest, is adapting not only to, adapting to the climate, but to the physical environment to where they were able to hide so effectively in it.
Right.
I don't understand how the guy could hide 10 steps. I mean, the guy took 10 steps and the dude just
2 feet away.
I listened to it a couple times, and Dan slips it in there. He buried himself in the sand.
Yeah,
he did.
No, I gotcha.
But he did it so well that you couldn't see a mound there in just a few seconds.
Which is crazy as shit.
Right.
It's just nuts.
Yeah.
He couldn't even see him.
It's crazy.
Think of the Fremen in Dune.
Just, man, what'd you say?
Think of the Fremen in Dune.
Right.
Yeah, or you know what it was? It was hide and go seek, Apache style.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it was.
There you go.
Hide
just
and go
imagine,
kill.
Wasn't there... I mean, if those guys were still around, how sweet would they have been for snipers?
Oh, that'd have been awesome.
Right.
And that's the thing. That's what occurred to me when we were like talking about how do you deal with people like that. Well, too bad we couldn't have incorporated them into our army as warriors. You know what I mean? Like made that warrior bond and said, like, look, we're trying to fight these people over here. You guys rock at this. Like, would you like to
Can you go
overseas
kill these Mexicans
and go kill
for
some
us?
people?
Could you go
totally.
across these German
Exactly.
lines into their trench and
bond
start
with
murking
them.
people?
Share your
Problem is, we had this idea that maybe warfare shouldn't be Manson-style raid murder.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, and that was their culture.
You're still talking about
And then, Matt, we wouldn't be off the hook then. Because if we did that, we still would have assimilated them and killed their culture eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we get. That's what the blame is falling on us. Well, we killed their culture, right?
or it would have assimilated, their culture would have been assimilated into ours, and we would have taken their culture, but as
Taking parts.
Remember
of it,
we were
but I'm
talking
sure we
about
did.
Viking culture in American modern military, so yeah, something like that.
Right. I'm sure we did assimilate some of their culture. Our culture here in America is not European.
No.
Okay, it is a mix of all of it.
Yep.
It's a mix of Muslim, Irish, Native American, all of it. Okay, it really is a melting pot here,
Yeah.
and that is a strength.
Italian, German.
Yeah, that's great. I was gonna say though, guys, seriously, to anyone listening, the guys are coming up with merch and they're looking for quotes. So if you hear something in these podcast episodes,
Hell yeah,
that you feel would be a good tagline, throw it up in the server, put it in the general
Talking
chat.
Hardcore chat group in the server, in the link in the description.
Yeah, the server is called Hardcore History Discussion, and yeah, they link to it. And join us for the book club. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yep, and then there's gonna be one that's just Matt's face with Hitler, fuck Hitler. It's gonna be Matt's face, and then quotes "fuck Hitler." Star F
I'll put that on my tombstone. I'll stand by that till the day I die. So
Matt's going out on a limb. Matt's going out on a limb.
It's a controversial
He's gonna
position.
go out on a limb with Hitler sucked. And I like it, Matt. I appreciate. We have you here for these hot takes. You know, you're here to do that, and I just like mine. One of my favorite quotes,
George. I say what you can.
Exactly. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from the earlier ones was about how Stalin sucked. You know, it's like, yeah, that's a good one.
You know what? I will. No, I need to find that quote about communists and flat earthers.
All right.
No, I will look it up. That was funny.
Get me, if you can get me honed in, I'll listen to the episode for you or something.
I think you were on it.
All right, cool.
I think
I don't listen to the episodes I was on, so that's probably what.
And the other thing is it might be the one that I have that I recorded that we still haven't aired.
You got something in the pocket?
We talked about communists again.
Oh, man.
Maybe.
Because then we had Dan on, and I still have that episode.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm waiting until there's such a demand for content.
Hear that, folks? They got so much content backed up.
I'm waiting until there's such a demand that I can be like, hey, here's an unreleased episode.
There you go.
Yeah.
And flat earthers.
Well, anyway, yeah, guys, look forward to everything coming out. Please join us on the discussion. Jack doesn't like to talk much, so we could use a few more people on the Discord who were willing to throw in some comments or maybe even ask a few questions.
Crusty NCO was on there.
Yep.
Yeah, he's cool.
Crusty NCO. I don't even recall his name.
Sunshine, she's great. She pops in occasionally with some good stuff. So yeah, shout out Sunshine.
Yeah, and she commented in there how we said all our listeners are male, and she's like, "Well, no, I listen."
Excuse me.
So I appreciate that, Sunshine.
Woman here.
Sunshine's also awesome because she listens to everything at 1.5 speed.
I think that's what she said.
So she has a hard time deciphering our voices.
I've been trying to speak more slowly for her.
I'm the one that sounds like John Wayne mixed with Elvis Presley.
Okay.
And you're the one that sounds like Carrot Top.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Serenade her with my voice.
Don't you think that's accurate? John Wayne mixed with Elvis Presley and maybe Johnny Cash?
No,
not at
funny.
all. That's why it's funny. That's a T-shirt too. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, look forward for the book club discussion. Please join us, guys. This was a fun one. I know we didn't talk about Apache Tears too much, but it's hard to be serious when we just spent all that time listening to the Holocaust one today as that came out.
Yeah, it was tough.
We're going to have to do a special edition about the Holocaust one that'll hopefully come out in before the book club. I'm going to make Scott listen to that. We're going to have to come out with that because that is
it's
good, and I'm glad Dan is doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But fuck, is it dark?
I'm
dark.
trying to listen to what the hell?
It's dark, but it's good.
No, Daniele Bolelli, and you have to listen to this one, George. It's that History on Fire.
Yeah.
And hold on. What the hell?
Yeah, if you're not listening to History on Fire and you like our stuff, you're going to really like his stuff.
Oh,
it's great.
The only thing is you got to get through his accent. But once you've listened to a few episodes, you don't even notice it.
My favorite episode of History on Fire is the one he did about the French monster that was terrorizing the countryside and killing peasants, and they couldn't figure out what it was. Did you hear that one?
What was it?
It was in France. It's in France in like the Dark Ages, and
sure.
the king kept sending in hunters, and he'd be like, "It's just a wolf," and the peasants were like, "We know what wolves look like. This is not a wolf." Like, and it was never really solidified as like
so
defined.
It's going to be a cliffhanger.
No. They just don't know what this thing was.
They don't
it
know,
was
right?
People.
So we're going to listen to this, and we're still not going to know because
it
was probably
really
a
cool.
person.
Right?
It
was probably a psychopath. Yeah, it was probably some psycho out there dressed in like 5 skins that he sewed together. Sasquatch. Yeah, I'm going with Sasquatch. Yeah,
I mean,
always Sasquatch.
Think about it, right? It's the Dark Ages.
Yeah,
George, I can't find the episode.
Which one was it about?
What do you read besides Indie, George? What have you been reading lately, man? Anything new?
Indie, I read. Besides Indie and the other books for our book club discussion, the most recent books I've read are your 2 books.
Oh, that's fantastic! Again, thank you.
Those were awesome. And so, if anybody out there is a publisher or knows a publisher for fiction books, please reach out. Matt is a really good science fiction author. I read his books and they're great. And if you like hardcore history and you like history podcasts, you'll like his books because he ties in so much of our history into telling these stories that take place in another galaxy. Or same galaxy, different
part of the galaxy. Right?
Yeah, different part of the galaxy. It's great. And if you know anybody that's into publishing fiction books, please reach out. Put them in touch with Matt because they are good.
Cheers.
All right, so what I'm trying to listen to on History on Fire is Ikkyu Sojin.
Oh, is that the one about the Zen guy he was telling us about?
Yeah.
So that's the other one Daniele Bolelli recommended. He said this was one of his favorite non-warrior characters from all of history. And this is this guy who is like a big Zen guy.
Zen monk.
But he loved to drink and womanize.
Yeah.
And I was like, that doesn't seem very Zen. And he's like, actually, it's kind of Zen.
So,
I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm super into that because I just got to listen to that.
Well, he's speaking your language.
There you go. Yeah. For sure.
So I'm still listening to the Taiping Rebellion one, and you check that out.
Sitting Bull, by the way, if anybody wanted to look at History on Fire, it's 54, 55, and 56. It looks.
No, it's 4 parts. So
I'm looking at it. 54, 55, and maybe 56.
And 57.
57 is not it.
Well, then you're looking at the wrong list. It's
and 57. I'm sorry. There, he put a bonus episode in between the last part. So,
right.
All right.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, but so coming out soon. If you haven't listened to the Daniele Bolelli episode, check that out. We are going to be doing.
Did you? Daniele Bolelli's hilarious.
Oh, he's a funny guy.
He's got 2 episodes called Fear and Loathing in Mongolia.
Do you know what that's about?
I don't know, but I want
The Bloody White Baron. I started listening to these. Okay. During the Russian Civil War in the 1918s or late 1910s, there was this noble, was related to the Tsar, who was just like rampaging around Mongolia, killing warring with the steppe peoples and killing shit tons of people and doing nasty stuff. And this was just like 100 years ago. I had never heard of it. And I started listening to that. I'm like, what the hell is this?
That's insane.
That's what's cool about Daniele. Okay. He gets into like more specific people. Dan is big picture. Daniele is most often he follows an individual
or an individual event.
Yeah. But even then it's most likely tied to an actual individual, which is fun. So
just so everyone knows that I didn't just set you up for a plug for my own work with asking you what you're reading. Like I was just hoping to make the rounds like we normally do.
I like that, and I'm glad you did.
Cool. I'm reading Gulag by Anne Applebaum. It's a history of the Gulag system. It's just
because you were looking to be in a cheerful mood too.
yeah, it kind of really like. Well, every time I go to the dentist, I become very bleak. So that's just happened.
Yeah, they suck. Fucking
yeah,
dentists.
it was pretty tough.
You know,
yeah.
I've been anti-dentite for a long time.
Anti-dentite.
Yeah, I feel
It's
like they're mostly shams.
Yeah, that's tough.
No, I'm not a big fan. My hot take: I think dentists rip you off.
I have all my teeth.
Folks, you're getting it here. Hitler sucked, and dentists aren't
Dentists
real.
rip you off. Yeah.
Well, sorry.
And I'm an anti-dentite, which is from Seinfeld, by the way. That's a Seinfeld reference.
Sorry.
Right.
So what I'm reading, well, of course, History on Fire
In
about
Indy.
Dick Sojin.
Mm-hmm.
Is Inda.
Inda. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I screw that up constantly.
Inda.
No, it's Inda. Inda.
Okay, Inda. Anyway, I'm trying to get through that book. I'm working on it. It's slow.
Because you're reading a paper copy.
Yeah.
And no audiobook.
No.
That's the hard part with Inda. No audiobook.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's got pictures.
We're going Stone Age.
It's got pictures in
Does
it.
it really?
Yeah.
That's
It's got maps and like pictures of like
right.
Native
Well,
American
I'm reading it on
war chiefs and
on
stuff.
Kindle
It's pretty sweet.
app, and it does have the pictures. I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. So every once in a while, I'm like, ooh, pretty picture.
Nice. And that's how Scott likes to read.
There
He
you
needs pictures.
Well, hey, 99% porn.
That's a nice callback. And on that note,
Yeah. What are you reading?
I told you. So I've been listening to. Okay, there's another history podcast that I found. It's called Storied Histories.
No, they're no good.
No,
I'm kidding.
I know.
I'm
So
kidding. I never heard
this
of it.
one I found because the gentleman who hosts the podcast, who tells the histories, was the guide on a riverboat tour we did when I was in New Orleans with my brother-in-laws last year.
Oh.
And he told the story of the Battle of New Orleans while we were on this
Whoa,
riverboat going
very
to
cool.
the battlefield of the Battle of New Orleans. And it was cool. And the guy's funny, right? He does. So he's got his normal voice, and then he's got his narrator voice, and he did that on the riverboat, and it's hilarious because and then you talk to him after, and you're like, is this the same guy? Because he talks with this like super narrator voice, and he does the podcast in that, but then once in a while he'll slip into his regular voice, and it's pretty funny.
I'm going to start using a narrator. I'm going to start using a narrator voice on my guest appearances.
Oh, his was way better than that, though.
Okay.
Yeah,
that
you'll have
sucked.
to listen to the podcast. You'll hear his voice. Yes, Scott could probably pull it off.
Maybe.
Yeah, Scott.
But I can't do accents.
I've been brushing up on my French accent, though.
Let's hear it.
Oh, very good. Well,
Pepe Le Pew,
No, I've already said it.
je ne sais quoi.
No.
That's my French accent.
That's you're just saying French words. That's
Yeah, not even
French
with the French accent either. So that's what's funny. I told you, I don't do accents.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, guys,
Keep putting
thanks
me
for
on the
listening. I know this was a rambling episode, but it is a weird mood today.
No.
You know, Dan Carlin drops a 3.5-hour addendum about the Holocaust. It really does just get your mind right.
I'm so glad you have time to listen to it.
I was driving.
I just even when I'm driving, I don't have time.
Yeah. Wah.
You know how many phone calls I've
Wah. We're done with this.
Okay, we're done.
Thanks, everybody.
No
thanks
more
for watching.
work
Matt, thanks again for joining us.
thanks for having me.
Thanks for